This pregnant woman was waiting at a traffic light. A car ran out of control to avoid a pedestrian who ran the red light and crashed into her. The woman covered her stomach and turned around. She begged the passers-by to save her baby. She was rushed to the hospital and gave birth with her last ounce of strength, leaving a tear in her eye. She left with regret. The woman's name is Yuli. After her death, she didn't want to be reincarnated and stayed with her daughter, Candi. She's been living in a funeral parlor for 5 years. There are many souls here who have unfulfilled wishes just like hers. They are all under the jurisdiction of the psychic Maidonso. Maidonso urges them to reincarnate every day for the sake of his business. She looks like a monster, but she's actually very kind at heart. It was the anniversary of Yuli's death. Her parents came to pay their respects. Yuli ate all kinds of offerings. She was lying on the ground. The father couldn't stop crying at the picture of his daughter, but the mother scolded him. Afterwards, her mother hid in the bathroom and turned on the faucet to hide her tears. Yuli's eyes also turned red. She can't give her mother any comfort now. After sending her family away, she came back to Candi. It was also Candi's birthday, but her father, Johnson, hadn't come home yet. It was late at night when Johnson came home to see Candi sleeping. He still couldn't get over Yuli's death. Yuli woke up early the next morning. She sensed the presence of other ghosts in the house. After she threatened the ghost, it appeared. Yuli warned the ghost to return to his urn, but the ghost said he had lost the urn. But in any case, Yuli would not allow the ghost to stay with her daughter. She was worried that the ghost would suck her daughter's luck, but the ghost thought Yuli was a ghost and that her daughter could see her. Yuli couldn't believe what he was saying. After driving the ghost away, she was so angry that she didn't know what to do. Then Candi came out of the room. Yuli greeted Candi gently, as she always did. Her daughter stopped in front of her. Then she walked right past her. Yuli couldn't believe that her daughter could see her. She fell to the ground in shock. It wasn't what she wanted. She rushed to the funeral home and told Maidonso Candi seemed to be able to see her. Maidonso told her it was because the child's chi was weak, and she's been with Candi since she was born, and that's why Candi can see ghosts. But she's still a child and can't tell if she's seeing a person or a ghost, so she's always in danger. Yuli blamed herself so much that she decided to reincarnate and not stay on Earth. She asked Maidonso if that would make Candi normal again, but Maidonso wasn't sure either. Yuli broke down and cried to Maidonso. She just wanted to spend more time with her daughter and see her grow up. Then she came to the kindergarten in a state of despair. She saw the teachers looking for Candi. It turned out that Candi was missing. She rushed around looking for her. When she passed by the kitchen, she saw a little kid running out of the refrigerator. Then she thought of what Maidonso had said, so she rushed to the kitchen. She found Candi in the refrigerator. Candi had fallen into a coma. She anxiously called out Candi's name, but Candi didn't respond. She ran to the hallway and tried to tell the teacher that Candi was in the refrigerator, but no one could hear her. She went into the refrigerator again and called out for Candi. Candi seemed to hear her. Her foot kicked in the door. The teacher, who was passing by the kitchen, saw Candi's foot through the door. She rushed Candi to the hospital. Luckily, she didn't die in time. She sat on the floor and cried. Yuli walked aimlessly down the street. There were snowflakes in the sky. She saw a mother and daughter hugging happily. She looked up at the sky and pondered. The snowflakes passed through her hands, seeing smiles on the faces of passers-by. Yuli's heart grew sadder. She fell to the ground and began to curse the gods. Soon after, Yuli's defiance angered the gods. Suddenly a thunderbolt flashed in the sky. The scattered snowflakes suddenly turned into hail. Passers-by began to run for cover. Only Yuli was left sitting on the spot. At the same time, the beads in Maidonso's hand suddenly broke off. In order to let her daughter become normal again, she decided to reincarnate and not to be attached to the earth. It was Christmas Day. Yuli stood at a distance and watched his daughter. But when Johnson came from the other side, her eyes suddenly changed. She looked at the woman in front of her with disbelief. Yuli also saw the strange look in Johnson's eyes. She looked down and realized that a snowflake had fallen on her shoulder and melted. A passerby could touch her body. She could also feel the coldness of the snowflake on her neck. At that moment, 3 girls behind her were talking about her. She went up to them and asked if they could see her. The girl's impatient face made it clear that she could see her. Yuli couldn't believe she'd come back to life. She ran out into the street and asked the passers-by again. She was so happy when she got a positive answer. She was thrilled to receive a leaflet from a passerby. After her happiness, she sat alone on a bench by the side of the street, full of doubts, tired, and hungry. Then Maidonso appeared. She told Yuli that because she had disobeyed the gods, so she had to be judged on Earth for 49 days. If she can return to her original position within 49 days, she could stay forever. But Johnson had remarried to Minjeng. Over the past 5 years, she has seen how good Minjeng is to Candi. What she didn't know was that Minjeng had already written the divorce papers. The revived Yuli has nowhere to go. She wanted to go home to see her parents, but when she came to the door, she didn't dare to ring the bell. She was afraid to scare her mom because of her heart condition. After thinking it over, she went to her friend Mandy's tavern. Luckily, her friend's habit hadn't changed and she still hid a key outside the door. She went to the photo wall and adjusted the position of the photos. Looking at the pictures on the wall, she remembered what May Donso had said. She picked up another photo and covered it with her memories. Mandy came to the store in the morning and saw that the photos on the wall had been tampered with. She went to the cashier's counter and realized the 10,000 won was missing. She called her husband, but he said the thief wouldn't look at that kind of money. On the other hand, Yuli, who had taken the money, was having a feast at the stall. Coincidentally, Johnson also came here to buy breakfast. When she heard the noise, she hid herself. After Johnson left, Yuli found his work badge, so she decided to deliver it to him. Johnson, who works at the hospital, was in a trance because he saw Yuli the day before. He took out his wedding ring and his mind was filled with images from yesterday. At that moment, Yuli had already taken the license plate to the front desk of the hospital. Gun Sang, a good friend of both of them, saw him. Gun Sang closes his eyes in shock at the sight of his friend, who's been dead for 5 years. When he opened his eyes to check again, Yuli had already disappeared. Gun Sang was so shocked that he ran away. The coworker gave Johnson his license plate. Johnson took it and saw the graffiti on it. It turned out that Yuli had drawn on it as a habit when she was riding the bus. When she reacted, she realized she couldn't erase it anymore. Johnson recognized Yuli's handwriting immediately. He asked his coworker who sent him the license plate. Then someone pushed in the door. There's an emergency patient at the hospital with a ruptured heart who needs to be operated on. The fastest doctor to finish the surgery is 5 hours away. Johnson had no choice but to walk into the operating room. When he saw the patient on the operating table, Johnson was in a trance. He left the patient and ran out of the operating room. It turns out that 5 years ago, Johnson watched Yuli die on the operating table. Since then, as a doctor, he had never been in the operating room again. Luckily, the chief's surgery ended early to avoid a medical emergency. The chief was so disappointed in Johnson that he yelled at him. At that moment, his friend Gun Sang came over and pulled the chief away. He told him about Johnson's psychological problems. Johnson looked at the graffiti on the sign and thought of Yuli. At that moment, Yuli came to the kindergarten to see his daughter, Candi, but then he saw the kid playing with Candi. Yuli thought about what happened last time. She ran into the kindergarten and tried to chase the kid away. At that moment, Candi came out and ran into her arms. For 5 years, she had wanted to hold her daughter so many times, but as a ghost, she couldn't hold Candi. This time, Yuli finally got to hold her daughter for real. She wanted time to stop right now. She hugged her tightly and didn't want to let go. This was her first official meeting with Candi. At that moment, the teacher came and took Yuli as a babysitter and asked her to take Candi away. Candi was no stranger to her and took Yuli's hand. Yuli experienced the happiness of being a mom for the first time. She had planned to take Candi home, but when she passed by the park, Candi saw a playground and wanted to go in. Yuli took Candi on the swings to enjoy some rare mother-daughter time. As the swing got higher and higher, Candi accidentally fell off the swing. Yuli was heartbroken and picked up Candi, saying sorry over and over again. At that moment, Yuli thought of the scene of the accident. She hugged Candi tightly for fear of losing her again. On the other hand, Johnson came to the funeral parlor in a state of shock. Then Min Jeng called Dan said that Candi had been picked up by a stranger. They rushed around looking for Candi. Johnson ran to the park and saw Yuli holding Candi. He was so scared that he fell to the ground. When Yuli saw him, he got up and left. Johnson rushed after him and grabbed Yuli. He looked at the woman who came back to life in front of him with disbelief. They both burst into tears. Johnson took Candi to Min Jeng and hastily explained to her that a friend had taken Candi. Then he hurriedly turned around to look for Yuli. Yuli didn't know how to explain her resurrection to Johnson. She couldn't tell Johnson about the 49-day trial either. She didn't want to break Johnson's peaceful life. In a state of extreme nervousness, she subconsciously bit down on the straw. Sitting across the table, Johnson saw this action and was even more certain that the woman in front of him was the deceased Yuli. Yuli didn't want to admit it, but Johnson took out his work badge. Yuli was the only one who could draw the graffiti on it. Yuli, in a moment of desperation, told Johnson that he had lost his memory. He only remembers that he's dead. Then she woke up again at the funeral parlor. She doesn't know what happened in between. Obviously, Johnson had a hard time accepting this explanation. He kept asking questions. When he noticed the wedding ring on his hand, he put his hand under the table. He tried to hide the fact that he was remarried. Yuli tried to escape by going to the bathroom, but Johnson kept his eyes on the direction of the bathroom. He was afraid that if he didn't notice, Yuli would disappear again. But in the end, she ran away. Just as Yuli ran out, Johnson chased after her. Johnson could only settle Yuli in the hotel and told her not to leave. He also left his bank card with Yuli. When he got home, Johnson was upset. Min Jeng could see that something was wrong. She asked her husband again who picked up Candi. Johnson still insisted that a friend had picked up Candi. Then he said it was too late and went to bed. At that moment, his cell phone received a bunch of credit card transactions. Johnson could only tell Min Jeng that his colleagues on the night shift made the purchases. On the other hand, Yuli was happily receiving all kinds of takeaways in front of the hotel. Looking at the table of food, Yuli couldn't tell how excited she was. This is the first big meal she's had since her resurrection. She picked up a chicken drumstick and took a bite of it. The real taste was so delicious. Thinking about how she could only stand around and drool when she was a ghost, Yuli enjoyed the food, drank beer and watched TV dramas. She woke up the next day and thought that she only had 47 days left on Earth. This was no time to lie around. She had to do something meaningful. That's when she thought of the kindergarten kids. Her first priority was to get rid of the kid and get Candi back to normal. Then she stepped out of the elevator to check on Candi. She was met by the ghosts of a family of 3 in the lobby. Yuli had a good relationship with them when she was a ghost, but Mei Donso said the ghosts must not know they can see them. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. Yuli had to pretend he couldn't see them and turn away. But the ghost's mother crouched on the ground and cried. Yuli was too soft-hearted to ignore her. She followed them to the park. She told them that she had insulted the gods and had been resurrected to face the 49-day trial in the sun. When they heard that, they wanted Yuli to help them fulfill their wish. But she was in a hurry to help Candi get back to normal. She had no time for their pleas. The sound of their argument attracted all the ghosts around them. They all asked Yuli to help them. Yuli was so scared that she got up and ran away. I don't know how many blocks he was chased. Finally, he hid in a corner and got away from the ghosts. Now Yuli realized what Mei Donso had said. After leaving the ghosts behind, Yuli sought his mother shopping for groceries. From afar, she saw that her mother's joint pain had returned and she was heartbroken. Johnson came to the hotel to look for Yuli, but was told that Yuli had just left. He could only wait anxiously in the hotel lobby for Yuli to come back. At that moment, he received another consumer message on his cell phone. This time, it was for healthcare products. Johnson thought that Yuli might have gone home to see his parents. He hurriedly dialed Yuli's sister's number. He asked her to tell his parents to take heart pills in advance. Then he drove there as soon as possible. When he arrived at the door, Johnson realized that Yuli didn't go inside. She just put the pills outside the door. The sister thought the pills were from Johnson. Johnson didn't bother to explain. He hurriedly left to look for Yuli. At that moment, Yuli came to the kindergarten and tried to find the kid to persuade him to leave. The kid ran to Yuli's side. Yuli tried to persuade him. Then the kindergarten teacher came out and saw her. The kid took advantage of their conversation to sneak back into the kindergarten. Yuli wanted to go after him, but the teacher stopped her. She turned her head and saw a posting on the glass for a kitchen helper. Yuli thought if she could work here, she could see Candi every day, so she decided to apply for the job. The teacher took her to the office and told her to wait for the dean, who was in a meeting. As soon as the teacher left, Yuli came out to look for the kid. Then Candi ran over and grabbed Yuli's hand. Johnson came to the kindergarten to pick up Candi from school. Through the window, he saw Yuli playing with Candi. Johnson couldn't bear to interrupt their good time and silently turned away. Soon after he left, he received a message that Min Jeng was coming to pick up his child. He hurriedly called Min Jeng and told him he would pick up the child, then asked him to go home first. But by now, Min Jeng had already arrived in front of the kindergarten. Johnson remembered that Min Jeng had seen Yuli's picture. He was worried about their meeting, so he ran towards the kindergarten. At that moment, Candi, who was playing with Yuli, heard his mom coming and ran out. Yuli followed him out in a hurry. His deceased ex-wife appeared in front of his current wife. Johnson rushes in but can't stop them from seeing each other. Min Jeng looked at Yuli with surprise, while the three of them were embarrassed. The kindergarten teacher came out with Yuli's resume. It turns out that the name Yuli wrote on his resume wasn't his real name. This dispelled Min Jeng's suspicions. Yuli was hired by the kindergarten director with her excellent resume. She went back to the hotel happily. When she saw Johnson in the lobby, they looked at each other from afar. Johnson fell into a deep memory. The couple is watching a drama. In the drama, the hero remarries soon after losing his wife. Yuli asked Johnson if he'd remarry if he died. Johnson vowed that he would raise his children on his own. But in the end, he was defeated by reality. Johnson apologized to Yuli for remarrying. Yuli told Johnson that he didn't come here to ruin his life. To make life easier for Yuli, Johnson bought Yuli a cell phone. Yuli took the cell phone and logged into her social network. She saw a message from her friend Mandy. Yuli liked it when she got emotional, but realizing that something was wrong, she quickly cancelled the like. But Mandy had already received a push message from the system. She was so scared that she threw away her cell phone. On the other side, Johnson is thinking about how to tell Min Jeng about Yuli's resurrection. He didn't know how to handle the relationship between the three. The next day, Yuli asked Mei Donso for the most powerful talisman before going to work. She was going to use it to deal with the ghosts. On her first day at work, Yuli saw a picture of her daughter and her family. She knew she could never return to that place. She had no choice but to stop thinking and start looking for the ghosts. Through the window, she saw the kid playing with her daughter again. The kid smiled at her and ran out of the classroom. Yuli chased him all the way to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. The kid smiled at her again. Yuli was a bit saddened, but thinking of Candi, she took out the talisman and aimed it at the kid. But the kid was playing happily. Seeing that the paper didn't work, she complained about Maidonso. Then she saw the red beans on the table. The ghost felt pain when it touched the red beans. Yuli threw the red beans at the ghost, but it didn't work. Before she left work, she noticed the photo on the wall again. It turns out that the kid went to this kindergarten when he was alive. He probably didn't even know he was dead. He refused to leave because he was waiting for his mom to take him home. When the bell rang at the end of the school day, he looked at the screen with hope. Then he looks down in disappointment. Yuli looked at the little boy huddled in the corner and felt pity. She found Maidonso and told him about the kid. Maidonso told Yuli that the kid was actually very naive. Once he fulfills his wish, he'll go away, and his biggest wish was to see his mom. The next day, Yuli came to the kindergarten. She reminded the director that it was time to return the photo on the wall to the parents. The director looked at the photo and nodded. The kid's mom came to the door of the kindergarten. Looking at the children playing, she couldn't help but feel the pain of losing her son. In the classroom, the kid looked out the window in solitude. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The kid turned his head and saw it was his mom. He ran out happily. Then Candi followed him out. The kid's mom took the toy from Candi. When she saw her son's name on the toy, she cried uncontrollably. The kid hugged his mom. He had waited so long for this moment. Then he followed his mom and left the kindergarten. Yuli finally got his wish. After work, Yuli walked out of the kindergarten. He bumped into his friend Mandy. Mandy looked at the woman in front of her with disbelief, thinking about the eel sushi that someone left in front of the store. Yuli's likes on the social networking site, and when Johnson found him and told him that Yuli had come back to life. On the other hand, Kun-sang also saw Yuli's figure on the surveillance camera. He was so scared that he didn't know what to do. Luckily, Mandy came back, but he soon realized that Yuli was here too. Then he cautiously reached out and touched Yuli's hand, just to make sure that the person sitting opposite him was a human being or a ghost. Then he asked Yuli some personal questions, and Yuli answered all of them correctly. Faced with this situation, Yuli continued to use her memory loss as an excuse. She wanted to be reincarnated after 49 days on Earth, but now she has gotten herself into this situation. Mandy told Yuli to go home and see her mom first. Have you ever thought of that? But she didn't dare, because she didn't know if she could stay forever. Her once happy family of four has been torn apart by her death. Her parents were in pain over the loss of their daughter. The next day, Yuli came to the kindergarten early and sprinkled red beans on all the ghosts hiding in the kindergarten. In the end, she gathered all the ghosts in front of the kindergarten and persuaded them as a psychic. But some ghosts didn't recognize her. Yuli took out the bells she stole from Maidonso and nailed them to the trees. Until the ghosts agreed to leave, Yuli let them down. Then Yuli picked up the red beans next to him. Yuli turned around and saw his colleague staring at him in amazement. Yuli was so embarrassed that he didn't know how to explain. He could only excuse himself to buy red beans and run away. The next day, the kindergarten held an open class. The school asked parents to attend with their children. Johnson was worried that Minjeng and Yuli would meet again, so he asked Candi if her stomach hurt. If it does, he'll go to the hospital. But when Minjeng asked him, Candi said it didn't hurt. The couple had no choice but to go to school. In the classroom, Candi was playing with red beans and was scolded by the parent next to her. Yuli poured a pot of red beans on the parent's head. Yuli, even though he can't recognize his daughter, he still wants to protect her. Candi's stepmother, Minjeng, saw that Yuli not only looked like Candi's real mom, she is even more protective of Candi. Johnson, who was standing next to her, was incredulous at this scene. Then Yuli went back to the kitchen. Auntie said it's time to distribute the fruits. She looked at the big pot of strawberries and reminisced about the past. When she was pregnant with Candi, her favorite fruit was strawberries. She always thought it was the baby's favorite fruit. When it was time to hand out the fruits, Yuli brought a lot of strawberries for Candi, but Minjeng said they didn't need strawberries. Yuli kept insisting that the strawberries were sweet. The baby will love it. Then the classroom teacher came over and told him that Candi was allergic to strawberries. Yuli put the strawberry away in embarrassment. Then she suddenly heard Candi crying. It turned out that the kid next to her had bitten Candi's hand hard. Out of motherly instinct, Yuli rushed over to comfort Candi. Everyone looked at Yuli in shock. Yuli then reacted. As a kitchen auntie, her reaction was a bit too much, so she could only leave in embarrassment as everyone watched. At night, her friend Mandy reassured Yuli that it was normal for her not to know what she was allergic to. But that's not why Yuli was upset. She was worried about whether her behavior at the kindergarten today would reveal her identity. Mandy looked incredulous. Then she asked her if she wanted to be the kitchen auntie and not take care of Candi anymore. And Yuli answered in the affirmative. Mandy was incredulous, facing her friends' questioning. Yuli was about to confess to Mandy that he was a ghost. At that moment, Min Jeng bursts in. The woman in front of her looked exactly like her husband's ex-wife in the photo. She ordered a bottle of soju. Then she downed one glass after another. Yuli was about to get up and leave. Min Jeng asked her about her relationship with Candi. Yuli could only respond awkwardly. But then Min Jeng fainted. The next day, Min Jeng woke up with a head injury and couldn't remember what happened yesterday. On the other hand, Mandy, who was taking her kids to school, had a band-aid on her nose. Kun Sang was furious when he saw his wife's injury. He thought his wife had gotten into trouble outside. Just when he was complaining that he had to pay the compensation for his wife, Mandy kicked him to the ground. Min Jeng, who was taking Candi to school, tried his best to remember what happened last night, but she couldn't remember anything. Just then she saw Mandy walking towards her. Mandy explained that the injury on her nose was caused by falling off the bed in the morning. Then Yuli came along. 3 women with bruises on their faces walk awkwardly down the road. After dropping off the kids, Min Jeng asks Mandy. She was out of line yesterday. Mandy obviously didn't want to talk about last night. She told Min Jeng that she went home after drinking yesterday. Min Jeng puts her hands in her pockets and realizes they're full of leaves. She looks at Mandy with embarrassment. Mandy can't stop smiling on her face. At that moment, she saw Yuli's father walking towards the kindergarten. It turned out that Yuli's father was a volunteer at the kindergarten to promote anti-trafficking awareness. When he saw his granddaughter's drawing on the wall, he kept praising it. The teacher was puzzled by Candi's drawings. After work, Yuli also saw the painting on the wall. Then he praised him again. After Yuli left, the teacher was dumbfounded. In the classroom, Candi saw Yuli passing by and ran towards her. Yuli picked up Candi and turned away when he saw his father in the classroom. The father came out and stood behind Yuli. Yuli was nervous and didn't know what to do. At that moment, the teacher came to pick up Candi. Yuli ran away in a hurry. Mandy heard about Min Jeng's divorce by chance. At night, she asked Yuli tentatively, is she really satisfied with just seeing Candi at the kindergarten? But Yuli said heartbreakingly that it wasn't her place anymore. Looking at Yuli in front of her, Mandy couldn't help but tell her about Min Jeng's divorce. Yuli left the pub and saw Min Jeng with Candi at the intersection. When Mandy saw Yuli, she ran towards her. Min Jeng walked over. She suddenly remembered what happened last night. Min Jeng was drunk and couldn't believe what she saw, so he hit Yuli with his head. Then he hit Mandy. Min Jeng was embarrassed and carried the Candi and was ready to leave. At that moment, Yuli thought of what Min Jeng had said yesterday before he got drunk and asked her to be Candi's mom. She turned around and asked Min Jeng if she could be Candi's mom. Min Jeng also remembered what he said. The two of them took Candi to a cafe. It turned out that Yuli wasn't talking about that. He wanted to be Candi's nanny. That way, he could get rid of the kid who's been hiding in the house. Looking at this woman who looked just like Candi's real mom, Min Jeng somehow felt attracted to her. The two of them smiled at each other as they covered their head wounds. The next day, Min Jeng told Johnson about the nanny. Johnson heard that Yuli was going to be Candi's nanny. That means the 3 of them will often have the opportunity to be together at the same time. Johnson was so nervous inside that he didn't know what to do. He told Min Jeng to make up his own mind. In the evening, Johnson came to Mandy's tavern to talk about the nanny, and remembered what happened to Yuli. All 3 thought that Yuli was hiding something. The next day, Yuli's father found another health product on the doorstep. The family couldn't figure out who sent them, and he knew so much about his family's health. He knew his father's liver was bad, so he sent medicine to protect it. Mom's knees were bad, so he sent her medicine for her knees. He even brought my sister's favorite candy when she drinks. When Mom saw the calcium tablets on the table, she thought of the nutritional supplements Yuli had been urging her to take. She opened a packet and drank it. The next day, Mom came to the temple to pray as usual. After worshipping the gods, she met an unreliable psychic. She told Yuli's mother that her dead child was always thinking about her. That's why she couldn't leave this world and stayed at home. Her purpose was to sell her talisman paper. Then Maidonso came out to expose her lies. After the woman left, Maidonso kept saying that Yuli's spirit was wandering around. When Yuli's mother heard this, she was furious and left. In the evening, Maidonso found Yuli and tried to explain to her face to face. Mandy was puzzled and looked at the 2 men who were bickering as if they had known each other for years. Mandy couldn't help but ask Yuli if she didn't believe in superstitions. Why did she talk so much with the witch? Yuli hurriedly explained that it was because she suddenly thought witchcraft was real after she came back to life. Mandy immediately asked Maidonso why Yuli came back to life. They couldn't make it up anymore. Yuli found an excuse to leave Mandy. Mandy came back and overheard their conversation. At the same time, she also knew Yuli's secret. Then Mandy barged in and asked what was going on. When she found out the truth, she immediately called Johnson to tell him the truth. Yuli grabbed the phone and stopped her. Mandy realized what Yuli had been hiding. She couldn't understand that Yuli had been avoiding Johnson and his parents when he could have lived. And Yuli knew that there was no place for her here. In Candi's heart, Min Jeng is her mother. Mandy is angry on her behalf. But Yuli didn't want to destroy Johnson's family. Mandy looked at Yuli, who was crying bitterly, and went up to her and hugged her. She knew what Yuli was going through. Both of them were crying and didn't notice Yuli's mother passing by. The mother stared at the woman in front of her with disbelief. She fell to the ground. She got up from the ground and slowly walked over to her. Yuli, who was crying, turned his head and called out to his mother. The mother fell to the ground in shock. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Soon after, her mother was rushed to the hospital with a bad heart. Shortly after, Johnson arrived. Yuli's mother opened her eyes and said she was fine. At that moment, she thought it was just a dream. But when she turned her head and saw Yuli in the hospital bed again, she sat up in surprise and looked at her daughter. Then she reached out with trembling hands and touched her daughter. Mother and daughter hugged and cried out their longing for each other. Then Yuli's father and sister arrived at the hospital. They froze when they saw her embracing. The father sat on the floor in shock. The sister went to make sure her sister was really back. After leaving the hospital, Mandy couldn't hide her emotions. She parked her car on the side of the road and stepped out of the car, breaking down and crying. Goon Sang thought it was a good thing that Yuli finally met her parents, but Mandy was crying so hard. Goon Sang seemed to recognize that something was wrong with her. He asked Mandy what was wrong, but Mandy can't tell her secret with Yuli. On the other hand, Yuli returned home and hugged his mother tightly. Lying on the bed, Yuli really felt the warmth of her mother's embrace. As a ghost, she wanted to hug her mother like this, but even that was a luxury. Now the two of them were hugging each other like this, and Yuli was checking with her again and again to see if she could see herself and hear her voice. Her sister and father also pushed the door to make sure Yuli hadn't disappeared. In the end, all four members of the family shared the same bed. Early the next morning, Yuli came into her room. She looked at and touched everything in the room, thinking that her family had kept the decorations from her life to hold on to her memory. Yuli felt sorry for her family. She didn't tell her father that she worked at Candi's kindergarten. She just left a note and went to work. Today was Yuli's first day as Candi's nanny. She took out the talisman paper she prepared in advance and went to the house with confidence to drive away the ghosts. Then she filled her bag with red beans, but it didn't work out that way. Ever since she took over Candi, Yuli has been receiving various text messages from Min Jeng. They were all about various cram schools at different times. Although she felt sorry for Candi, she kept reassuring herself. Exhausted, Yuli finally waited for Candi to finish her last tuition class. When she came out of the classroom, Candi was holding a doodled egg and gave it to Yuli. Yuli was so happy because this was the first gift Candi had ever given her. Even though it was just a simple drawing, she treasured it very much. On the way home, Yuli held the gift carefully, but Candi was always holding another colorful egg in her hand. Yuli asked Candi who it was for. Candi happily ran to Min Jeng and gave the egg to her mom. As Yuli watched, he felt a little sad. She handed Candi's school bag to Min Jeng and turned away reluctantly. At that moment, Min Jeng asked Yuli if she wanted to see her house. Yuli agreed without hesitation. She finally made it to Candi's house. When Johnson got home, he went straight to his study to avoid the two women. In the study, Johnson didn't know what to do with Yuli's arrival. Only when he heard Yuli leaving did he open the door and walk out of the room. Downstairs, Yuli remembers that she forgot the gift from Candi. The two of them get on the elevator again. By now, Johnson was starving. He started to eat the eggs on the table. When the three of them returned home, they were surprised to see this scene. Johnson quickly spit out the egg in his mouth. Min Jeng also looked at Yuli with surprise. Yuli realized that he had overreacted. She ran downstairs, a hurry. Chagrined, Min Jeng, on the other hand, couldn't figure out why Yuli was so angry. That night, Goon Sang stopped the car and an egg hit the car window. Then another one hit the car window. He was so scared that he didn't know what to do. Then he realized that there was a wave of women holding banners in front of his car. It turned out that the people who threw the eggs at him were fans of a male celebrity who committed suicide. The star had gone to Goon Sang for counseling before he committed suicide. Goon Sang diagnosed that he didn't have any psychological problems. After that, the star died. The fans believed that Goon Sang's mistake indirectly caused the idol's suicide. So the fans took it upon themselves to avenge their idol's death. That's when Mandy came back. How could she stop when she saw her husband being bullied? Looking at her domineering stance, the fans went up to her and asked her who she was. Goon Sang looked at Mandy with admiration. The fans then threw eggs at Mandy, but Mandy dodged them all. Then it was Mandy's turn to fight back. The fans were scared by Mandy's attack and ran away. On the other hand, Yuli returned home and looked at the calendar above his bed. Half of the 49 days have passed. She sighed at how fast the time had gone by. The next morning, her mother opened the door to Yuli's room and found her not there. The baby's things on the table had been put away. Her father opened the refrigerator and found the dishes full of food missing. It turns out that Yuli had packed up all the family's belongings and taken them to Johnson's house. Once again, she stole Mae Donso's exorcism bell and searched for the ghost. She finally caught the ghost in Johnson's room, but surprisingly, there were more ghosts in the house than the ones she had seen before. The female ghost in front of us is a virgin ghost. She has to find a masculine man to solve her regrets before she can be reincarnated. She tried to possess Min Zheng many times, but Min Zheng's aura is too strong, so she never succeeded. Then Yuli got Mae Donso to give her the virgin ghost. The other ghost was sent by Yuli to the home of the son of a family of 3. Now Yuli got rid of all the ghosts around Candi. She will stay with Candi for the rest of the day and won't let any ghosts get close to her. She asked Mae Donso again if this would make Candi normal. Mae Donso replied vaguely, "Yes, I think so." Yuli carefully asked again what would happen if Candi could still see ghosts. The answer she got was that she would become a psychic like Mae Donso. Yuli was very angry when he heard that. When Mae Donso saw Yuli's reaction, he thought about it. That day, when Mae Donso went out, he met an unexpected visitor, a man dressed in black and holding an 8-ball club. When Mae Donso saw him, she hid inside the house. The man kept knocking on the door. When the ghosts saw him, they thought he was Mae Donso's suitor, but one of the young ghosts knew where the man came from. Turns out he's a famous exorcist in the area. All the ghosts he sees are sent to reincarnation without mercy. After learning the truth, the ghosts were scared and ran away. He came here on orders from his superiors to increase the number of ghosts in the columbarium. Mae Donso was sweating for the ghosts, especially when she heard the names of Yuli and Candi. She rushed to plead for mercy, but the exorcist ignored Mae Donso's plea. On the other hand, Yuli came to work at the kindergarten. She saw a little girl whispering to everyone. She called the girl over. The girl said something that shocked her. Candi's mom, Min Zheng, was going to abandon Candi. She overheard the girl's parents talking at home. She started spreading the rumor around the kindergarten. The girl's mom was about to tell her friends, but she mistakenly sent the message to the kindergarten parents group. Mandy was furious when she saw the message. Yuli also came to the store in a rage. While they were discussing how to teach them a lesson, Min Zheng suddenly pushed in and called them together to teach each other a lesson. It turned out that Min Zheng, who saw the news, had been putting up with others for years, because Candi wasn't his biological child. Min Zheng has been suffering from the cold words of others for many years. This time, she finally decided to fight back. They went to the children's playground and found these women and started their revenge. Even though it was in a children's playground, that the 3 of them accomplished a perfect revenge. Afterwards, the 3 of them went to the barbecue restaurant to celebrate. Johnson was at home playing with Candi alone, when Johnson picked up a sticker and handed it to Candi. Candi ran away without saying anything. She took a picture of the 3 of them and put the sticker on the empty space next to it. When Johnson asked who it was, Candi said Yuli's name without thinking. Johnson thought he'd miss her and asked again. Johnson was shocked by his daughter's answer. He didn't know how she knew Yuli's name, but he knew that if Min Zheng or anyone else knew Yuli's real identity, he would be in big trouble. Then the doorbell rang. Yuli brings Min Zheng back from a drunken night out. After settling Min Zheng and Candi, Johnson found Yuli. When Yuli found out that Candi knew her name, she hugged the picture frame where Candi had put the sticker. It turned out that Candi had been watching her all along. Yuli used to think that she was watching over Candi, but she didn't realize that Candi was also watching her. After calming down, Yuli couldn't tell Johnson the truth. She could only say that Candi might have heard Mandy calling her name. Johnson didn't think too much about it. Instead, he offered to let Yuli stay by Candi's side as her mother. He would tell Min Zheng the truth. But Johnson was strongly opposed by Yuli. When he looked at Yuli, who was crying bitterly, Johnson's heart felt very bad too. But when he asked why, Yuli wouldn't say anything. After leaving Johnson, Yuli was still reeling from the incident. As she walked, she cried loudly. She didn't care about the passers-by staring at her, but something unexpected happened to Yuli. She met a man who greeted her. She didn't pay any attention to him and went on her way. But she didn't get very far before the man's staff sucked her back. Yuli looked at the man incredulously and asked him who he was, but the man said he was here to pick up her daughter. At that critical moment, Mae Donso came and saved Yuli. Yuli and Mae Donso were the only ones left in the room. Yuli asked Mae Donso what he meant by taking Candi. Mae Donso said that if Candi keeps seeing ghosts, she have to live like Mae Donso or an exorcist. Mae Donso asked Yuli why he still doesn't want to find his place. Yuli was filled with tears. She thought back to her days with Candi. Although she tried her best to be with Candi, they were happy together. But when Candi saw Min Zheng, her eyes would show her heartfelt joy and happiness. Yuli can't be selfish and ruin Candi's happiness, even though she's Candi's real mother. But in Candi's eyes, it's been Min Zheng who's been by her side since she was born. This kind of companionship goes far beyond blood relations. Mae Donso's eyes were filled with tears as she listened to Yuli's words. She marveled that Yuli could give up his life for his child. She told him to stay close to his daughter, because the exorcist will come and take Candi and turn her into someone like them. Fearing that the exorcist would take Candi away, so Yuli waited at Candi's door early the next morning for Minjeng to take Candi to school, and gave Minjeng all kinds of weapons to protect him from muggers. She put everything in Minjeng's bag after showing it to him. She couldn't tell Minjeng the real reason. She could only say that recently there are kidnappers who specialize in abducting and selling children. That's why it's important to take precautions. At night, her mother couldn't sleep with Yuli in her arms. She wanted Yuli to quit being a nanny, and she asked if Yuli was as cute as she was. She still thinks she's cute even though she's been raising her daughter for 30 years. Not to mention Yuli, who had never held a Candi before. Mother thinks it's wrong to keep this from her. She should tell Minjeng the truth, but Yuli refused, and cried that Mom must miss her granddaughter too. But Mom said she missed her daughter more. The next morning, when Yuli came to bring her father a change of clothes, she looked at him in his sleep. She knew that because she had passed away too soon, she hadn't been able to let her family enjoy their lives. It was something she blamed herself for. She tries to do something for her family during her short stay. Yuli sent a message to Minjeng that she could take care of Candi all day today, but she got a message from Minjeng saying no. Just when Yuli was lost, Johnson called. It turned out that Johnson also understood Yuli's plight. He took Candi to Yuli's parents' home to help them take care of him. When his sleeping father saw Candi beside him, he thought he was still dreaming. He didn't realize it wasn't a dream until Candi got out of bed and stepped on the ground. The father got up and went out to see his granddaughter in front of him. Yuli looked at the happy family and smiled with relief. Johnson took Candi out on the pretext of playing with Mandy's son Lucas. Meanwhile, Minjeng ran into Mandy with Lucas in the neighborhood. In order to create more opportunities for Yuli and her family to spend time together, Johnson spent a boring day in the park until Yuli called. Though his heart was very hard, but after seeing Yuli's grateful eyes, it was all worth it to him. Johnson was busy replying to Minjeng's text while waiting at the red light. He didn't notice that Candi was running towards the exorcist. Just as the exorcist tried to put his hand on top of Candi's head, Johnson rushed to stop him and asked who he was. Then the exorcist told him that Yuli was a ghost. Knowing the truth, Johnson carried Candi to Mandy's store. He asked Mandy why she didn't tell him earlier. Mandy was speechless. Gun Sang tried to explain to him, but Johnson shook off his hand and ran like crazy to find Yuli. He finds Yuli and can't believe that Yuli has been by his side for the past 5 years. They both sobbed uncontrollably. After calming down, Johnson asked Yuli, "Does it hurt when you see me forgetting you?" Yuli said of course it hurt, but when he thought about how Johnson had been in tears and drinking every day since he died, alone in an empty room, getting up alone, eating alone, taking care of Candi. More than that, she wanted Johnson to start the new life. Yuli firmly told Johnson that she was no longer his wife and told him to let go of himself. Johnson was shocked to hear Yuli say this, but more than anything, he was touched. Yuli originally thought that Mandy had told Johnson everything, but when she talked to Johnson, she realized that the exorcist had already approached Candi. Yuli was very scared, but for the sake of Candi's safety, she told Johnson all the secrets in her heart. Johnson didn't blame her for crying. Instead, he kept comforting her. At that moment, Minjeng sent a text message to Johnson, but he didn't get a reply for a long time, so she dialed Johnson's phone but there was no answer. When she couldn't reach Johnson, Minjeng went to Mandy's store. Minjeng was surprised to see Candi running out of the house. Mandy and her husband could only lie and say that Johnson had an emergency and went to the hospital. Minjeng could only half believe it and left. Soon after, Johnson came back in a daze and passed by Minjeng without seeing him. Minjeng called out to him and asked why he didn't send Candi home if something happened at the hospital. Johnson just picked up the baby without any explanation. On the other hand, Yuli went home and cried all night. Early in the morning, she went to Maidonso in a rage. She threatened to kill the exorcist. Maidonso was afraid that Yuli had angered the exorcist and hurriedly dragged her into the house, and their conversation was overheard by the ghosts of a family of 3 in the distance. They told each other to stay away from the exorcist, or they'll be taken away from their son before he's even married. Yuli paces back and forth in the room. She's frustrated that she can't do anything. Maidonso tells her firmly what she should do and what she wants to do. She assures Yuli that Candi can't see ghosts. Yuli was relieved to get Maidonso's promise that she would take care of Candi so that she wouldn't see ghosts, but he accidentally bumped into his mother, who happened to be praying at the temple. The mother is very surprised that they are together. Yuli explained that Maidonso was his friend, so he took her away, but the mother is still full of doubts. On the other hand, Johnson was always by his daughter's side. He follows her wherever she goes. When his wife saw his strange behavior, she couldn't figure out the reason. It turns out that a few days ago, Johnson learned that an exorcist would come to take Candi away at any time. From the moment he learned the truth, he has been by Candi's side at all times. He took Candi to school himself. Even when he left, he kept looking back. But when he thought of Yuli protecting Candi at the kindergarten, in the end, he was relieved to leave. Yuli came out and looked at Johnson's back. She knew that Johnson always felt guilty about himself. After school, Yuli and her father took Candi to play in the park, watching her father tirelessly accompanying Candi. Yuli knew in her heart that her father had been hiding his love for Candi all these years. She got up to help her father to buy a drink, but when she came back, she saw her father alone at the same spot, calling out for Candi. Just after Yuli left, a garbage woman fell on the ground. The kind-hearted father went to help, but he didn't see that Candi was attracted to the toy in the hand of a girl passing by. When the father turned his head, Candi was gone. When Yuli found out, she rushed to look for Candi. She was worried that Candi had been taken away by an exorcist. On the other side of the road, Candi realized she was lost. She broke down and cried. At this moment, the exorcist in the distance is slowly walking towards Candi. Meanwhile, Johnson finally decides to reveal Yuli's identity to Minjeng. He invited Minjeng to a cafe near the hospital, but Minjeng received a call from Yuli. Candi is missing. Johnson pushed the door and saw Minjeng running out in a panic. The three of them searched for Candi together, but they didn't find the child until nightfall. Johnson comforted Minjeng in his arms. Then Yuli also came crying. Although she had let go of everything, but when she saw her former lover holding another woman in his arms, she still had a bad feeling in her heart. Yuli slowly came up and said sorry to Minjeng, but Minjeng couldn't help scolding Yuli. At that moment, Yuli saw a kid standing not far away pointing in the direction of the slide. She rushed over to the slide and finally found Candi, who had fallen asleep on the slide. When Minjeng and Johnson heard the sound, they also rushed over. Although she found Candi, Yuli was still very upset about the situation. She apologized to Minjeng again, but Minjeng couldn't forgive Yuli. Saddened, Yuli didn't want to go home and didn't look for Mandy. She went to the temple and found Mei Donso. Yuli wanted to seek comfort, but was surprised to learn that a family of 3 found Candi, and she was about to be taken away by an exorcist. They hid Candi in a children's playground. When they were about to tell Yuli, the exorcist caught them red-handed. Yuli thought that they had been ghosts for over 20 years to see their son, who was left behind, become a family man. On the other hand, Minjeng just found out from her husband that her daughter's babysitter is her husband's deceased ex-wife. Minjeng looked at Johnson with suspicion. It's like a lie. She sat in front of her dresser and couldn't believe it. Even though Johnson kept knocking on the door, Minjeng didn't give him a chance. Johnson sat outside her bedroom door all night. She didn't open the door until dawn. Minjeng, who came out, didn't pay any attention to Johnson. He just picked up Candi and went to wash up. Then he told Johnson to go to work as if nothing had happened. Johnson knew that Minjeng didn't believe in Yuli's resurrection. On the other hand, Mandy looked so lost that she didn't have the heart to work. She thought of how Yuli once told her that her resurrection had put everyone in pain. Mandy finally realized why Yuli didn't come to her at first but hid instead. Thinking about this, she finally made up her mind to make Yuli happy for the rest of her life. She drove Yuli with her. The two of them talked and laughed on the way, and the car was full of laughter. Yuli hadn't laughed like this in a long time. They rode the zip line together. They rode bikes in the park together. Since Yuli became human again, he's been seeing tears and sighs every day. Now with Mandy by her side, she can finally forget her worries for a short while. On the other side, Minjeng didn't believe Johnson's words, but she ran to Mandy's store unconsciously. But before she got to the front of the store, she saw Mandy and Yuli. Seeing them talking and laughing, Minjeng hurriedly hid in a corner. She followed them and saw them walk into a house. Minjeng went up to them. When she saw Yuli's name written on the door, she believed Johnson's story. Thinking back on everything that happened during this time, Minjeng finally realized the truth. Candi's real mom really came back, and she stayed in the middle of her mother and daughter like a fool. She cherished her friendship with Yuli so much, but the true identity of this friend was something that everyone knew except herself. Minjeng came back from Yuli's house and walked back with a downcast look on her face. At that moment, Johnson also got off work. Both of them look like they've lost their minds. Minjeng looked at Johnson and didn't say anything. He punched Johnson. He hit him all the time to express his grievances. Johnson didn't say anything and just let Minjeng hit his chest. On the other hand, Mandy returned to the store and looked at the photos taken at Yuli's house. She thought of what Yuli told her during the date, that she wanted to live. At that moment, she couldn't hide her emotions in front of Gunsang anymore. When Gunsang asked her, she told him that Yuli could only stay on Earth for 49 days. At that moment, Johnson suddenly appeared and asked about the reason. After Johnson's questioning, Mandy finally revealed the secret that Yuli had hidden in his heart. When Johnson heard this, he didn't want to believe it. He shouted at Mandy. Mandy was also in great pain. Johnson walked down the street in a daze, remembering the conversation he had with Yuli. He finally realized what Yuli was going through. He found Yuli and asked her why she treated him like this. Is she really going to stay for 49 days and then leave cruelly? Yuli knew she couldn't hide her secret after all, and she had her own reason reasons and excuses. The emotions that both of them had suppressed over the past 5 years finally erupted at this moment. After listening to Johnson's words, Yuli finally said what she really thought. She wanted to leave after Johnson remarried, but Johnson was in a coma all day long. Although he remarried, Johnson's heart was always locked up. Then there was the matter of Candi. Yuli couldn't leave without worrying. Looking at Yuli in front of him, Johnson decided that he would let Yuli live. He couldn't bear to see Yuli die again in front of him, but Yuli cried and asked what would happen to Minjeng if he survived. At this moment, Johnson couldn't care less. It seemed that for him, compared to Yuli's death, everything else seemed less important to him. Minjeng was alone in her room, crying, until Candi came to her and touched her. The next day Johnson wanted to talk to Minjeng about Yuli, but Minjeng made an excuse and refused. When she left the house, she ran into Yuli, who was waiting at the door. The two of them went to the cafe. Yuli apologized to Minjeng for hiding her true identity, but Minjeng didn't accept it. Everyone around her knew who she was but herself. She felt that everyone's apologizing to her was like an insult to her. After thinking it over, Minjeng returned home and told Johnson that she had decided to leave, because Johnson couldn't let go of Yuli in his heart. Once Minjeng told herself not to be jealous of a dead person, but now the person has come back alive. Minjeng knew in her heart that Johnson and Candi never belonged to her. That's why she decided to leave this home that never belonged to her in the first place. Although Johnson felt guilty about Minjeng, but for the sake of Yuli's life and death, he accepted Minjeng's offer. The next day, Johnson took time off work to bring Yuli and Candi to the amusement park. He wanted to let her get in touch with Candi in the remaining time, so that she could find her place as soon as possible. Although Candi had a good time with Yuli, Yuli could see that Candi missed her mom. Looking at Candi's behavior, Yuli knew that Candi only had Minjeng as her mother in her heart. On the way back, they were silent all the way. After dropping Yuli off at home, Johnson told Yuli that he had taken a long vacation. Tomorrow, the two of them will start to accompany Candi to find her place as soon as possible. Yuli knew that Johnson had done everything for her, but she rejected it all. She remembered what Maidonso once said: if she forced herself to stay in the human world, Candi would always be able to see ghosts. Although she wanted to stay alive and grow up with her daughter, but for the sake of her daughter's future, she refused Johnson's offer and told him the truth. Johnson's heart began to hesitate when he found out, but he calmly reassured Yuli that there must be a solution. Although Johnson tried to persuade Yuli to change her mind, Yuli's attitude remained firm. Originally, she had planned to stay for 49 days and then leave quietly, but Johnson's sudden appearance disrupted her plans. Even so, Yuli remained steadfast. The next day, Yuli was tidying up her room when her mother bumped into her. Her mother looked at the things in the room and started remembering things from Yuli's childhood. The reason why she kept all these things was so that she could remember Yuli. Yuli hugged his mother gently, but Mom had a bad feeling in her heart. When she went to her room, her father saw that her wife didn't look well, so he asked her about it. It turned out that both of them had the same dream last night, a dream that made them lose Yuli. Mother had a feeling that Yuli had come back to say goodbye to her. Johnson was at Yuli's door early in the morning trying to persuade him to change his mind, but Yuli remained adamant. Maidonso found Yuli. She handed Yuli a wishing sign. On it was written the wish of Yuli's mother: I want to see my daughter just once. Maidonso told Yuli the real reason for her resurrection. Yuli felt a deep sense of guilt towards his mother. It turned out that her mother's day-to-day prayers had touched the heavens. She was given the chance to come back to life for 49 days, but she only thought of her daughter and ignored her mother's feelings. God's judgment on Yuli was to let her trade Candi's future for her chance to live. Yuli realized that this was a test from heaven. She was determined not to trade. Thinking about the 49 days after her resurrection, she spent time with Candi and the happy time with her parents. Yuli was also very satisfied. She died suddenly in a car accident. She didn't say goodbye to her family and friends, but now she decided to cherish her remaining days to say goodbye to her friends, to do the things she never had the chance to do. Then she came to Mandy's store. She calmly told Mandy that she was leaving soon. Although Mandy couldn't accept it in her heart, but she understood Yuli's decision. She gave Yuli the friendship bracelet that Minjeng gave them, and she told him that Minjeng was going to divorce Johnson. When Yuli heard that, he immediately wanted to go and explain to Minjeng. On the other hand, Minjeng was on her way to take Candi to school for the last time. She looked at the daughter she had raised for 5 years. Even though they're not related by blood, that the relationship between them over the past 5 years has been so strong that she can't let it go. Candi could also see that Minjeng was depressed. She took out a sticker and put it on Minjeng's hand. Minjeng's suppressed emotions instantly erupted. She hugged Candi tightly and burst into tears. Yuli came to the kindergarten and saw that Candi had already come to class. She heard from the teacher that Minjeng had just left. Yuli wanted to catch up with Minjeng and talk to him, but Candi suddenly vomited. She carried Candi to the hospital. The doctor said it was just acute gastroenteritis and she's fine now. Everyone was relieved. At that time, Min Jeng also rushed to the hospital. When she saw Yuli, she was very embarrassed. After making sure Candi was okay, she turned around and left. Yuli chased after her and called Min Jeng. She begged Min Jeng not to go and told her the whole truth. After Yuli's persuasion, Min Jeng and Johnson finally realized the position of each other in their hearts. It was Yuli's facilitation. They finally opened their hearts to each other. Johnson looked at the sleeping Candi. He understood why Yuli did what he did. If it were him, he would have made the same choice as Yuli. Yuli wrote down in a notebook what he wanted to do in the remaining days. The first thing was to fulfill her promise to her friends. She invited her ghost friends to a barbecue restaurant and put up a few of them on the tablets so that the ghosts could savor the delicious food. They promised to meet again after reincarnation. The second thing is to repay those who have helped you. Yuli invited the son of a family of 3 ghosts to her home to cook a home-cooked meal. The third thing is to enjoy life as a mom. Yuli took Candi and Mandy to a dessert store to spend quality time together. The fourth thing was to say goodbye to her family. She took Candi and her family on a picnic outdoors. At night, all 5 of them shared the same bed. The family was happy. The last thing is to say goodbye to the ones you love. Yuli and Mandy went on a family camping trip. It was something they had agreed to do before they die. Now it's finally happening. Mandy gave Yuli a letter from Min Jeng. In the letter, Min Jeng said she would protect Candi with all her heart. In the evening, Yuli and Johnson said goodbye. They embraced each other with smiles and wished each other happiness. Finally, Yuli said goodbye to Mei Dongso before leaving. Although she had saved Yuli's name as a nuisance in her cell phone, but when she was really facing the farewell, Mei Dongso couldn't help but cry. She handed Yuli a mirror. Even though he's not a complete body, but he should still say goodbye. Yuli looked at herself in the mirror and smiled as she said goodbye. And so she left the world without a care in the world. Years later, Candi grew up happily under the care of Min Jeng and Johnson. Once in a while, she would take out the picture of the 3 of them that was in a book. She knew that the woman in the photo was her mom who gave her life, but she treasures the time she has with her parents. Johnson has also gotten over the psychological shadow of the past. The family is happy and living the life that Yuli wanted for them.